The wind that December night cut through Tom Brennan's coat like a skinning knife. He stood at his ranch gate, lantern swinging wild, squinting through snow thick as wool curtains. The cattle were lowing in the barn, spooked by something more than weather. Then he saw her, a child, collapsed face down in a drift, one small hand still clutching a burlap sack. Papers scattered across the snow, ink bleeding into white. Tom's boots crunched as he ran. The girl's lips were blue, frost crystals clung to her hair. He lifted her, light as kindling, and the sack tore. A deed slipped free, signature line torn ragged at the edge. He caught the name printed at the top, Samuel Hargrove. The Hargroves had died 6 weeks ago. Their cabin burned to ash, so why was this child half froze, carrying their land deed through a blizzard? Inside the house, his daughter Jenny stood at the window, watching her father carry in the girl who'd change everything. Tom kicked the door shut behind him, snow swirling across the floorboards. The fire in the hearth threw shadows up the log walls. Jenny stood frozen by the kitchen table, her doll clutched tight. "Papa, who is she?" "Don't know yet." Tom laid the child on the rug near the fire, close enough for warmth, but not so close she'd burn. Her dress was thin cotton, wrong for December. Her boots had holes worn clean through the soles. "Get me quilts, all of them." Jenny ran. Tom stripped off the girl's frozen coat, stiff as sheet metal, and wrapped her in the first quilt Jenny brought. The child's breath came shallow and fast. He'd seen hypothermia before, seen men die from it. "More quilts," he said, "and heat water for broth." Jenny moved quick and quiet, the way she'd learned after her mother died. No questions, just obedience born from grief. Tom rubbed the girl's hands between his, trying to pull warmth back into her fingers. They were small and chapped, the nails ragged. Working hands. She'd known labor, this one. Her eyes fluttered open, dark brown, unfocused. She stared at Tom like he was something she'd dreamed. "You're safe," he said. She tried to sit up. Panic flared across her face. "The paper. Where's the paper?" "Easy now." "The deed," her voice cracked. "Mama said keep it safe. Don't let the bank man." She coughed, a wet rattling sound that made Tom's chest tighten. "It's here." He nodded toward the burlap sack by the door. "All of it." She sagged back, eyes closing. Jenny appeared with a tin cup of broth, steam curling up. Tom lifted the girl's head, pressed the cup to her lips. She drank in small sips, shaking so hard the liquid sloshed. The smell of wet wool and wood smoke filled the room. Outside, the wind howled like something alive and hungry. "What's your name?" Tom asked. "Lily." Another sip. "Lily Mae Hargrove." Tom's hands stilled. He'd known Samuel Hargrove. Not well, the man had kept to himself on that 40-acre patch near the creek. But Tom remembered the cabin fire, remembered the preacher saying both parents died, trapped inside. "Your folks," Tom said carefully. "The fire." Lily's face crumpled. 6 weeks ago." Jenny knelt beside her, solemn. "I lost my mama too, 2 years back." The girls stared at each other, two children with the same hole carved through their middles. Something passed between them that Tom couldn't name. He stood and crossed to the burlap sack. Papers lay scattered inside, some water-stained, others smudged with soot. He pulled out the deed, unfolded it slow. The print was clear. Samuel Hargrove, 40 acres, Section 12. Section 12. But the signature line at the bottom. Tom's finger traced the ragged edge where the paper had torn, or been cut. The line was blank. He looked at Lily. She'd fallen asleep against Jenny, both girls tangled in quilts like barn kittens. Tom carried the deed to the table, smoothed it flat under lamplight. The paper still smelled like smoke. He'd seen plenty of legal documents, ranch contracts, cattle bills of sale, mortgage notes. This one looked legitimate except for that missing signature. Without it, the deed was worthless. He folded it back up, tucked it into the sack. The girl would need more than warmth and broth to survive winter. She'd need a miracle. Morning came cold and pale. Tom woke to find Jenny already up, sitting at the kitchen table across from Lily. The older girl was awake, but looked hollow-eyed, staring at a cup of milk like she'd forgotten how to drink. Tom poured coffee, black and bitter. The pot rattled against the stove. He set a plate of day-old biscuits between the girls. "Eat," he said. Lily picked at a biscuit, but didn't take a bite. Jenny nudged the honey jar closer. Tom sat, cradling his coffee. "The deed," he said. "Your father signed it?" Lily nodded. "Mama told me he did. At the church, when I got baptized. Pastor Amos saw it." But the signature line's torn off. I know. Her voice was small. The paper got wet when I crossed the creek. I tried to keep it safe. But... She stopped, her throat working. It's all I got left of them. Tom studied her, 12 years old maybe, thin as a fence rail, no kin that he knew of. The bank would come for the land soon enough. They always did when an owner died without clear title. This won't hold up in court, child, he said. Not without your daddy's name clear. Lily's face crumpled, her hands fisted in her lap. But he signed it. Mama said he did, at the church. Tom's jaw tightened. He'd failed his own wife, been out mending fence when she went into labor alone, bled out before he made it home. He couldn't fix that, but maybe... We'll figure something, he said. Lily looked up, hope flickering in her dark eyes like a candle in wind. Outside, a crow cawed. The sound cut through the morning stillness, sharp as a warning. A week passed. Lily stayed in the house, helping Jenny with chores, mending, sweeping, kneading bread dough with her small, scarred hands. She moved quiet as a ghost, always watching the door like someone might come through it swinging an axe. Tom rode out each morning to check fence lines and count cattle. The snow kept falling, piling in drifts that reached the porch rail. Winter had its teeth in deep this year. On the 8th day, supplies ran low. Tom hitched the wagon and drove into Coldwater with Lily beside him. Jenny stayed home. She had a cough that needed watching. The town square sat under a blanket of gray sky. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin lines. The general store smelled like coffee and lamp oil. Tom moved down the aisles, loading flour and salt pork into his basket. Lily followed close, eyes down. At the counter, Esther Whitfield was paying for thread. She turned, saw Lily, and her face softened. Lord have mercy, is this the Hargrove child? Yes, ma'am, Tom said. Esther touched Lily's cheek, gentle as anything. Poor lamb. I heard about your folks. Lily's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. The door banged open. Cold air rushed in, carrying the smell of pomade and tobacco. Silas Drummond stepped inside, brushing snow from his coat. His boots gleamed, new leather, polished to a shine, expensive. Tom noticed, because Silas had been wearing worn-out boots just last month. Silas's eyes landed on Lily. His mouth tightened. Thought that Hargrove brat would have been on the orphan train by now, he said, loud enough for the whole store to hear. The room went still. The clerk stopped weighing nails. Esther's hand froze on her coin purse. Tom's jaw locked. He stepped between Silas and Lily, his body a wall. Mind your tongue, Silas smiled, thin and cold. Just stating facts, Brennan. Girl's got no kin, no legal standing. Bank'll be auctioning her folks' land come spring, April 15th to be exact. That land belonged to her father. Did it? Silas tilted his head. Funny thing about that, Samuel Hargrove never completed the transaction. No valid signature on file. Tom's hands curled into fists. The store's floorboards creaked under his boots. Esther set her coin purse down with a deliberate thud. Silas Drummond, you'd steal land from an orphan? I don't steal, Esther. I follow the law. Silas tipped his hat. Good day. He walked out. The door slammed behind him, rattling the window glass. Tom paid for his supplies in silence. His pulse hammered in his ears. Lily stood rigid, her face pale as milk. Outside, Esther caught Tom's arm. That man's a snake. Always has been. Can't prove otherwise, Tom said. Maybe not yet. Esther's eyes were sharp. But snakes leave tracks. The bank office smelled like wood polish and old paper. Silas sat behind his desk, fingers steepled. A ledger lay open before him, columns of numbers marching down the page in neat black ink. Tom stood with Lily at his side. He'd left the wagon outside, reins tied to the hitching post. Mr. Brennan? Silas's voice was smooth as creek stones. To what do I owe the pleasure? Tom pulled the deed from his coat, unfolded it, and set it on the desk. The Hargrove land. This deed proves ownership. Silas picked it up, studied it. His expression didn't change. Incomplete. No signature. The girl says her father signed it, at the church, during her baptism. The girl says... Silas set the deed down, pushed it back toward Tom with one finger. Children say many things, Brennan. Doesn't make them true. Lily's breath hitched. Tom's hand went to her shoulder, steadying. I remember Samuel Hargrove, Silas continued. Good man, worked hard, but he died before finalizing the sale. That makes the land bank property by default. Defaulted holdings revert to us when there's no clear heir with documented claim. She's his daughter. Is she? Silas opened a desk drawer, pulled out another paper. No birth certificate on file. No legal documentation proving kinship. For all I know, you found some orphan and decided to use her for financial gain. Tom's vision tunneled. His hand dropped from Lily's shoulder. He leaned across the desk, voice low and dangerous. You calling me a liar? I'm calling you misguided. Silas met his eyes without flinching. Her parents died 6 weeks ago in a tragic accident. The land's been sitting vacant. Banks within its rights to reclaim and auction. When? April 15th, 16 weeks from today. Silas slid the deed back across his polished desk. The wood gleamed under lamplight. Law's the law, Brennan. Bank holds defaulted properties when ownership can't be proven. If the child can produce valid documentation before auction, signed deed, witness testimony, something tangible, we'll reconsider. Tom's knuckles went white. Her parents died 6 weeks ago. Then she's got 16 weeks to find proof they didn't abandon their claim. Silas folded his hands. His expression was carved from stone. I suggest you use the time wisely. Outside, the church bell tolled noon. The sound echoed through the thin walls, each ring a hammer strike. Tom straightened. He took Lily's hand, small and cold in his, and turned toward the door. Oh, and Brennan? Silas's voice stopped him. Those who interfere with bank business tend to find their own loans complicated. Your ranch mortgage comes due in June. Be a shame if there were any irregularities. Tom didn't turn around. He kept walking, pulling Lily with him into the cold. The door clicked shut behind them. Snow was falling again, soft and silent. The wagon horses stamped their hooves, breath steaming. Lily looked up at Tom, her face streaked with tears she was trying not to shed. He's gonna take it, isn't he? Everything Mama and Papa worked for. Tom lifted her into the wagon, then climbed up beside her. The reins were stiff with ice in his hands. Not if I can help it, he said, but the words felt hollow. The law was the law, and Silas Drummond held all the cards. That evening, Esther Whitfield's boarding house smelled like roasted chicken and fresh bread. Tom sat at her long table with Lily beside him, both picking at their plates. Other boarders filled the chairs, a railroad clerk, a widow, a traveling preacher. Esther moved between them with a coffee pot, filling cups. She caught Tom's eye and tilted her head toward the kitchen. He followed, leaving Lily with a biscuit and honey. The kitchen was warm, steam rising from a pot on the stove. Esther shut the door. I heard what happened at the bank, she said. News travels. Always does. She poured 2 cups of coffee, handed him one. Silas Drummond's been bank manager for 10 years. Holds half the town's mortgages. Folks don't cross him. I noticed. Esther leaned against the counter, arms crossed. But he's not God, no matter how he acts. There's ways to fight this. How? Tom's voice was tired. The deed's got no signature. The girl's got no legal standing. Bank says the land's theirs. Pastor Amos might know something. Tom frowned. The preacher? He keeps records, baptisms, marriages, funerals, all witnessed and dated. Esther's eyes gleamed. If Samuel Hargrove signed that deed at the church like the girl says, there might be documentation. A knock came at the kitchen door. Pastor Amos stepped in, brushing snow from his black coat. He was a lean man, 50-some years old, with wire spectacles and ink-stained fingers. Esther said you needed to see me, he said to Tom. The Hargrove girl, Lily. She says her father signed the land deed at her baptism. Says you witnessed it. Pastor Amos went still. His hand rose to his spectacles, adjusting them. I remember. 3 witnesses signed the registry that day. Myself, Esther here, and Jacob Mills. Jacob's still alive? Tom asked. Far as I know, lives out past the mill. Hope flickered in Tom's chest, small but real. Then we've got proof. The registry was stolen. Pastor Amos's voice was flat. Break-in last month. Someone forced the lock on my office. Only thing missing was the registry book. The hope died. Tom set his coffee down. Convenient. Very. Pastor Amos's jaw tightened. Sheriff said it was probably drifters. But drifters don't pick locks, and they don't leave everything else untouched. Silas, Esther said. The name hung in the air like gunpowder smoke. Pastor Amos crossed to the window, staring out at the dark street. Snow swirled under the lamplight. I can't prove it, but that break-in happened 2 weeks after Samuel and Margaret Hargrove died, right when their land would have come under bank scrutiny. Tom's hands curled around his coffee cup. The porcelain was warm against his palms. So we've got nothing. No deed signature, no registry, no proof. I didn't say that. Pastor Amos turned from the window. His face was shadowed, but his eyes were sharp behind the spectacles. I said the registry was stolen. I didn't say I only kept one copy. Tom straightened. You have another? The Lord teaches us to be wise as serpents, Mr. Brennan. Bank managers aren't the only ones who keep records locked away. He paused. But if I produce that registry now, Silas will claim I forged it. He's got the law on his side, and I'm just a country preacher. My word against his won't hold up in court, not without something more. Proof that he has motive to lie. What kind of proof? I don't know yet. Pastor Amos moved toward the door. But I'll keep looking. In the meantime, you keep that girl safe, and don't let Silas know we're digging. He left, the door clicking shut behind him. Esther refilled Tom's coffee. That man's got more courage than most. Church funding comes through the bank, you know. Silas could cut him off any time. Then why's he helping? Because he's got a conscience. She set the pot down. Rare thing these days. Tom drank his coffee in silence. It was bitter and strong, the way he liked it. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. The sound was like something trying to get in. Late that night, Tom walked with Lily back to the ranch. The snow had stopped, but the cold was knife-sharp. Their breath came in white plumes. The horses' hooves crunched through ice-crusted drifts. Lily had been quiet since they left the boarding house. Now she spoke, her voice small. Pastor Amos really saw Papa sign? He says so. Then why won't he tell the bank? Tom chose his words careful. Because sometimes the truth needs more than just one man's word. Needs proof folks can't argue with. Lily was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if we can't find proof? The question hung between them. Tom didn't have an answer that wouldn't be a lie. They reached the ranch gate. Lamplight glowed in the windows. Jenny had left it burning for them. The barn loomed dark against darker sky. Tom helped Lily down from the wagon. She stood in the snow, looking up at him with those solemn eyes. My papa used to say, God don't let bad men win forever, she said. You think that's true? Tom thought about his wife, bleeding out while he was miles away, thought about good men dying young and bad men growing fat on other folks' suffering. Thought about all the ways the world broke people and called it justice. But this child had already lost everything. She didn't need his bitterness. I think's it, he said slowly. The good men have to fight to make it true. Lily nodded, like he'd passed some test she'd set for him. Inside, Jenny was asleep by the fire, Tom's rifle across her lap. She'd been keeping watch. Tom lifted the gun carefully. The metal was cold enough to burn. February came with wind that cut through every crack in the walls. 8 weeks until the auction. Tom marked the days on the calendar with short black lines, watching them add up like fence posts, marching towards something inevitable. The town meeting was Pastor Amos's idea. Community needs to hear both sides, he'd said. But Tom knew better. Silas had called it, not the pastor. And Silas never did anything without a reason. The meeting hall sat above the general store, a low-ceilinged room with plank benches and a wood stove that couldn't quite kill the cold. Tom arrived with Lily and Jenny, found the room already half full. Ranchers and shopkeepers, wives and hired hands, all of them watching. Silas stood at the front beside a chalkboard, looking like a schoolmaster about to deliver a lesson. He wore a new vest, gray wool, brass buttons, more new clothes on a bank manager's salary. Tom found a bench near the back. Lily sat between him and Jenny, hands folded tight in her lap. Silas rapped his knuckles on a table. The room quieted. Thank you all for coming, he said. His voice carried easy, practiced. We're here to discuss the Hargrove property, 40 acres, Section 12. As you know, Samuel and Margaret Hargrove passed in tragic circumstances last December. The bank has reviewed the title and found the ownership claim incomplete. Therefore, the property will be auctioned April 15th to satisfy unpaid taxes and fees. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tom stood. That land belonged to Samuel Hargrove. His daughter's here. She's got a deed. Every head turned. Lily shrank against Jenny. A deed with no signature, Silas said smoothly, which makes it invalid under territorial law. I sympathize with the child's situation truly, but the law doesn't bend for sentiment. Convenient, Tom said, that the only proof got lost. Silas's smile was thin. Are you accusing the bank of impropriety, Mr. Brennan? The room went dead silent. Tom felt the weight of eyes on him, calculation behind every stare. These people owed Silas money, their mortgages, their business loans. Cross him, and the notes came due early. Everyone knew it. "I'm saying it's strange," Tom said carefully. "That's all. Strange things happen." Silas spread his hands. "But the bank must follow procedure. Now, if there are no further objections—" "I object." Esther Whitfield stood, her voice clear and strong. "Samuel Hargrove worked that land for 8 years. Built a home, raised a daughter. You'd take it from her over a missing signature? The law takes it, Esther, not me." Silas's voice hardened. "I'm simply the instrument." "A mighty convenient instrument," someone muttered. Tom couldn't see who. Silas's jaw tightened. "This meeting is to inform the community of legal proceedings, not to debate settled law. The auction stands, April 15th. He paused, let his eyes sweep the room. "Anyone who wishes to bid is welcome, provided their own accounts are in good standing." The threat was clear as creek water. Tom's hands curled into fists, but before he could speak, Lily stood. Her chair scraped loud against the floor. "My papa signed that deed," she said. Her voice shook but held. "At my baptism." Pastor Amos saw it. So did Miss Esther and Mr. Mills. Silas looked at her the way a man looks at a fly buzzing near his dinner. "Child, I'm sure you believe that, but children's memories are unreliable, especially after trauma." "I ain't lying." "I didn't say you were lying. I said you were mistaken." Silas turned to the crowd. "Samuel Hargrove was a good man, but he was also in debt, owed the bank nearly $200 in operating loans. When he died, those debts remained. The land is collateral. That's how banking works." $200. Tom's gut twisted. That was more than most ranchers made in a year. "You didn't mention debt before," Tom said. "Didn't I?" Silas pulled a ledger from his satchel, opened it. "Loan approved November 1886, due November 1887. Samuel Hargrove missed the payment, died 2 weeks later." He closed the ledger with a soft thump. "The bank has been more than patient." Lily's face had gone white. "Papa didn't owe nobody. He paid cash for everything." "Perhaps he didn't tell you. Parents often shield their children from financial troubles." Silas's voice was almost gentle. Almost. "Mr. Brennan, do you have legal standing as this child's guardian?" The question landed like a fist. Tom's throat tightened. "No." "Then I'm afraid she has no advocate in this matter. Unless you'd like to petition for guardianship, though that would require—" Silas paused, pretending to think. "A clean financial record. Your ranch mortgage comes due in June, doesn't it? 4 months away. I trust you'll have the payment ready." The threat hung in the air, naked and sharp. Tom stared at Silas across the crowded room. Wanted to cross that distance, wrap his hands around the man's throat, but Lily was watching, Jenny was watching, and violence would only prove Silas right. "We're done here," Tom said. He took Lily's hand, pulled her toward the door. Behind them, Silas's voice followed. "The auction is April 15th. Anyone interested in bidding should contact the bank." Outside, the night was bitter cold. Stars burned overhead, hard and distant. Tom's breath came fast, white clouds in the dark. Lily was crying, silent tears that froze on her cheeks. Jenny held her hand. "He's lying," Lily whispered. "Papa didn't owe money. He didn't." Tom wanted to believe her, but Silas had a ledger. Numbers in black ink. And Tom had nothing but a child's word and a torn piece of paper. The next morning, Tom rode to the bank alone. Left the girls at home with the rifle and instructions to bar the door. Silas's office was warm, a coal stove glowing in the corner. The smell of wood polish and tobacco filled the small space. Silas sat behind his desk reading a newspaper. He didn't look up when Tom entered. "Mr. Brennan, back so soon?" Tom pulled the deed from his coat, laid it on the desk. "Show me the loan papers." Silas folded his newspaper, set it aside. He opened a drawer, withdrew a thin file, pushed it across the desk. Tom opened it. Inside, a single promissory note dated November 1886. Samuel Hargrove's signature at the bottom, clear and strong, $200 at 8% interest. Tom's stomach dropped. He studied the signature. It looked real, matched the handwriting on old letters he'd seen from Samuel, but his finger traced the edge of the paper. It was crisp, new. The deed was water-stained, smoke-damaged, edges soft with age and handling. This loan paper looked like it had been written yesterday. "When was this filed?" Tom asked. November 1886, as stated. Public record? Of course. Silas's smile was cold. You're welcome to verify with the county clerk, though I believe you'll find the office is closed until March. Snow. Tom set the paper down carefully. His hands wanted to shake, but he wouldn't give Silas the satisfaction. You forged this, he said quietly. Careful, Brennan. Silas leaned forward. Accusing a bank officer of fraud is a serious charge, one that could land you in jail. Or worse, could affect your own loan status. Your mortgage payment is what, $30? Due in 4 months? He paused. Be a shame if we had to foreclose early due to irregularities in your account. The coal stove popped. The sound was loud in the silence. Tom stood. Every muscle in his body screamed to hit something, but Silas had won, and they both knew it. The girl keeps her land, Tom said. The bank keeps its property, and you keep your ranch by staying out of bank business. Silas picked up his newspaper again, dismissing him. Good day, Mr. Brennan. Tom walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Outside, the sun was pale and cold. His horse stood at the hitching post, breath steaming. Tom untied the reins, climbed into the saddle. His hands were shaking now. The thaw came in March, slow and grudging. Icicles dripped from the porch eaves, forming mud puddles in the yard. The sound was constant, drip, 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 like a clock counting down. 6 weeks until the auction. Tom found Lily in the barn one evening, mucking stalls. She worked methodical, pitchfork steady in her small hands. Jenny was beside her, dragging fresh hay from the loft. They'd fallen into a rhythm, these two. Sisters in everything but blood. You don't have to do that, Tom said. Lily kept working. Gotta earn my keep. You're not a hired hand. Ain't your daughter either. Her voice was flat. She stabbed the pitchfork into soiled straw, lifted it, dumped it in the wheelbarrow. Not by law, anyway. Tom leaned against the stall door. The barn smelled like horses and leather and the sweet rot of hay. Lily. It's all right. She stopped, wiped her face with the back of her hand, left a smudge of dirt across her cheek. You tried. I know you did. Jenny touched Lily's shoulder. Papa won't let the bank take it. He can't stop them. Lily's voice cracked. Nobody can. Tom's chest tightened. He'd fought grizzlies and blizzards and cattle thieves, but he couldn't fight paper and ink and a legal system that bent for men like Silas Drummond. Come inside, he said. Both of you. Getting dark. They washed up at the pump, cold water that made their hands ache. Inside, Tom lit the lamps and stoked the fire. The cabin warmed slow. Jenny set out leftover stew from the day before, sourdough bread hard enough to need soaking. Lily ate mechanical, not tasting. Then she reached into her dress pocket and pulled out something small, a silver locket on a thin chain. Mama's, she said. Only thing I got from the fire. She tried to open it, fingers fumbling with the clasp. Won't budge. Been stuck since that night. Tom held out his hand. She dropped the locket into his palm. It was cold, heavier than it looked. Intricate scrollwork covered the surface, tarnished but beautiful. He tried the clasp, frozen solid. Fire melted the hinge, maybe, he said, or the cold after froze it shut. What's inside? Jenny asked. Mama said it's a map. Lily's voice went soft. In case I ever forgot where home was. Tom held the locket to the lamplight. Through the thin seam where the two halves met, he could see paper inside, folded tight, edges yellowed. We could force it, he said, but might damage what's inside. Leave it then. Lily took it back, slipped the chain over her head. The locket settled against her collarbone, catching the firelight. Maybe it ain't meant to open. Tom studied her, this child who'd walked through a blizzard, who'd lost everything, who still got up every morning and mucked stalls and braided Jenny's hair and pretended she wasn't breaking apart inside. Your papa signed that deed, he said. I believe you. Lily's eyes filled. Believing don't make it true in a court. No, but it makes it true here. Tom tapped his chest, and that's got to count for something. Outside, an owl called. The sound drifted through the walls, lonely and persistent. 2 days later, Esther showed up at the ranch with a basket of bread and a conspiratorial gleam in her eye. She sat at Tom's kitchen table, poured herself coffee without asking. Pastor Amos has been doing research, she said, going through old church records, land surveys, anything he can find. And, nothing yet, but he's not giving up. She broke off a piece of bread, buttered it. There's something else. I've been asking around, quiet-like. Turns out Silas bought himself a new pair of boots in January, $8, and a new vest last week, another $6. Tom frowned. Man's allowed to buy clothes. On a bank manager's salary of $20 a month, after he pays his own boarding and expenses? Esther's eyebrow arched. Where's he getting the extra money? The question hung there. Tom leaned back in his chair. You think someone's paying him? I think a man don't get new boots and vests unless he's come into money. Esther's voice dropped. And I think it's mighty convenient that Samuel Hargrove dies, his land goes up for auction, and suddenly Silas is spending like a railroad baron. Speculation won't hold up in court. No, but it's a thread. Pull hard enough, might unravel something. She finished her coffee, stood. Pastor's calling for witnesses at Sunday service. Anyone who remembers Samuel signing anything, anywhere. Long shot, but worth trying. Tom walked her to the door. The afternoon sun was watery and weak, barely warming the air. Mud squelched under their boots. Thank you, he said, for helping. Esther patted his arm. That child deserves better than what she's getting, and Silas Drummond deserves worse. She smiled, thin and fierce. We just need one person brave enough to speak first. Once that dam breaks, others will follow. She climbed into her wagon, snapped the reins. The horses pulled forward, wheels cutting through mud. Tom stood watching until she disappeared around the bend. Then he turned back to the house. Through the window, he could see Lily and Jenny at the table, heads bent together over a torn dress they were mending. The lamplight made their hair glow, one dark, one light, different as dawn and dusk, but somehow the same. He'd failed his wife. Let her die alone while he was out working fence. He wouldn't fail this child, whatever it took. Sunday came, with weak sunshine, and the smell of thawing earth. The church stood white against pale sky, its bell tower casting shadows across mud-rutted ground. Tom rode in with Lily and Jenny, all three dressed in their best, which wasn't much, but it was clean. Inside, the pews were packed. Every rancher, shopkeeper, and hired hand in the territory seemed to have shown up. Word had spread about Pastor Amos's call for witnesses. Tom found a seat near the middle. Silas Drummond sat in the front row, spine straight, hands folded. He didn't turn around. Pastor Amos stood at the pulpit, his worn Bible open before him. He read from Micah, something about justice and mercy and walking humbly. Then he closed the book. Most of you know why we're here, he said. The Hargrove land is set for auction in 5 weeks. The bank claims no valid deed exists, but I witnessed Samuel Hargrove sign that deed 7 years ago at his daughter's baptism. I'm asking anyone else who remembers that day to come forward. Silence. Tom's jaw tightened. He felt Lily shrink beside him, making herself small. Pastor Amos waited. The clock on the wall ticked loud. Then Silas stood. He turned to face the congregation, his expression sorrowful. Pastor, I respect your conviction, but memory is fallible, especially after 7 years. He paused. And I must point out, some might use orphaned children for financial gain. Not you, of course, but others, less scrupulous men. His eyes slid toward Tom. The room shifted. Whispers hissed like steam. Tom's hands curled on his knees. Every muscle screamed to stand, to shout, to hit something. But Lily's hand found his, small and cold and trusting. He stayed seated. I'm not asking for money, Tom said, his voice carried. I'm asking for truth. Of course you are. Silas's smile was thin. But judges don't favor men who brawl in churches, especially when they're seeking custody of acquired children. The words landed like stones. Tom started to rise. Esther's hand caught his shoulder, holding him down. Pastor Amos's voice cut through the tension. This is a house of God, Mr. Drummond. We speak truth here, not accusations. I speak only facts. Silas sat back down, dismissing them all. The service ended in strained silence. People filed out, eyes averted. No one approached Tom. No one spoke. Outside, Lily stood in the churchyard, staring at the mud. Jenny held her hand. Nobody's gonna help, Lily whispered. They're all too scared. Tom had no answer, because she was right. April came with cold rain, 4 weeks until the auction. The calendar on Tom's wall was more black marks than white space now. He spent mornings riding fence lines, checking cattle, fixing what the winter had broken. Afternoons, he searched. The burned cabin ruins, the creek bed, Anywhere Samuel Hargrove might have left proof. On the 10th day of April, the creek finally thawed. Tom rode out with Lily after breakfast. The water ran fast and muddy, swollen with snowmelt. They picked through the debris along the banks, branches, dead leaves, the skeleton of a wagon wheel. "What are we looking for?" Lily asked. "Anything your folks might have left. Papers, documents, anything." They worked in silence, the sound of rushing water filling the air. The smell of wet earth and rotting wood was thick. Then Lily shouted. Tom splashed through the shallows. She was kneeling in the mud, pulling at something wedged between rocks. A metal box, rusted and dented, old, maybe 10 years or more. They pried it open. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, papers. Tom's hands shook as he unfolded them. Letters, bills of sale, and... His breath caught. A letter on railroad company letterhead. Addressed to Silas Drummond, dated October 1887, 2 months before the Hargroves died. Tom read it twice to be sure. "Pleased to confirm our offer of $2,000 upon successful acquisition of the Hargrove property, Section 12. The right-of-way survey indicates optimal routing through this parcel. We trust you will facilitate the transaction with your usual discretion. $2,000. Silas's annual salary was maybe $300. Tom looked at Lily. Her eyes were wide, uncomprehending. "What's it mean?" she asked. "It means," Tom said slowly, "Silas had a reason to want your folks' land. A big reason." The creek rushed past, cold and relentless. Above, a hawk circled, calling. Tom folded the letter carefully, tucked it inside his coat. "We need to show this to Pastor Amos and the sheriff." "Will they believe us?" "They will now." They rode back fast, horses kicking up mud. The sky overhead was gray and heavy, threatening more rain. The sheriff's office smelled like coffee and gun oil. Sheriff Mathers sat behind his desk, a bear of a man with graying hair and skeptical eyes. Tom laid the letter on the desk. Mathers read it. His expression didn't change. "Where'd you find this?" "Creek bed, washed up in the thaw. Convenient. It's got a date. Railroad company seal. Silas Drummond's name." Tom's voice was tight. $2,000 to acquire Hargrove land, 2 months before they died in a fire. Mathers set the letter down. "Railroad offers money for land all the time. Nothing illegal about that." "Hargroves didn't sell. They died before they could." "Died in an accident." "Or didn't." Tom leaned forward. "That cabin fire. Did anyone investigate?" "Pastor said it was wind-blown embers. Happens." "Door was barred from the outside." Lily's voice was small but clear. "I remember. I couldn't get out the back. Had to break a window." Mathers looked at her. Something shifted in his face. Doubt, maybe. Or conscience. "You're saying Silas Drummond set that fire?" "I'm saying someone did. And Silas had 2,000 reasons to want that land empty." Tom straightened. "Check the cabin ruins. If the door was barred outside, there'll be marks on the wood. Brackets bent outward." Mathers was quiet for a long moment. Rain started pattering on the roof, soft at first, then harder. "I'll look into it," he said finally. "But Drummond's got connections. This letter proves he wanted the land. Doesn't prove he killed for it. It's more than we had yesterday." Mathers nodded slowly. "Keep this quiet. If Silas gets wind we're investigating, evidence might disappear." He paused. "And Brennan, watch your back. Men who kill for $2,000 don't stop at one." Outside, the rain fell steady and cold. Tom pulled Lily close as they walked to the horses. Lightning flickered on the horizon. Thunder followed, distant but coming closer. 3 days later, Tom rode into town to find the general store buzzing. Esther met him on the boardwalk, her face tight. "Sheriff went to the cabin ruins yesterday," she said. "Found the door brackets, bent outward just like Lily said." Tom's pulse kicked up. "That's proof. Arson." "Would be. Except Silas has an alibi. Says he was in Cheyenne on bank business the week of the fire. Got hotel receipts, witness statements, all documented." Esther's voice dropped. "And this morning, Jacob Mills, one of the witnesses to Samuel's signature, came into some money, $50, bought himself a new plow." Tom's gut sank. Silas paid him off. "Can't prove it. Mills says it was a loan from a cousin back east." Esther shook her head. "But $50? For a man who's been broke for 3 years?" Inside the store, the clerk was weighing nails. the sharp metallic smell mixed with coffee and tobacco. Tom bought what he needed, flour, salt, ammunition, and kept his mouth shut. But he felt eyes on him. The town was watching. Outside again, Pastor Amos was waiting by Tom's horse. His face looked 10 years older than it had a month ago. "I heard about Mills," Tom said. "So did I." The pastor's voice was weary. "Silas is methodical. I'll give him that. Every loose thread he ties off. The railroad letter proves motivation, not murder." Pastor Amos pulled his coat tighter against the wind. "I spoke with the county prosecutor. He says without evidence linking Silas directly to the fire, a witness, a confession, something concrete, the letter just shows business interest, not illegal." Tom's hands curled into fists. "So he gets away with it." "I didn't say that." The pastor glanced around, then stepped closer. "The baptismal registry I kept, the one with Samuel's signature and 3 witnesses, I'm going to present it at the next town meeting, force Silas to respond publicly. He'll claim you forged it. Let him. I've got the original ink, the dated entries before and after. An expert could verify it's genuine." Pastor Amos's jaw set. "But Silas will fight, and he'll go after anyone who supports us. Your mortgage comes due soon, doesn't it? June. He'll call it early, claim some irregularity." The pastor's eyes were sad and fierce at once. "This is going to cost you, Tom. Maybe everything." The wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and wet wood. The sky overhead was the color of old iron. "She's worth it," Tom said. Pastor Amos gripped his shoulder. "I know. That's why I'm helping." That evening, Tom sat at his kitchen table with a telegram in his hand. It had arrived an hour ago, delivered by a rider from town. The words were short. "Heard about your fight. Silas Drummond defrauded our county too. Coming to testify. Arrive April 14th. Robert, Tom's younger brother. They hadn't spoken in 3 years, not since their father's funeral when they'd argued about the ranch inheritance. Robert had wanted to sell. Tom had wanted to keep it. The fight had split them clean down the middle. Now Robert was coming, to help. Tom read the telegram again. April 14th, one day before the auction. Jenny appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Papa, you all right?" "Yeah, sweetheart. Go back to bed." She didn't move. "Is Lily going to lose her land?" Tom folded the telegram, tucked it in his pocket. "Not if I can help it." "What if you can't?" The question was too old for a 9-year-old, but then Jenny had grown up fast after her mother died. They both had. "Then we'll figure something else out," Tom said. "We always do." Jenny came to him, climbed into his lap even though she was getting too big for it. She laid her head against his chest. "I don't want her to go away." "Neither do I." "Can we keep her? Even if the land's gone?" Tom's throat tightened. He thought about guardianship laws, about what Silas had said in that meeting, about how the system didn't care what was right, only what was legal. "I'm going to try," he said. "But it's complicated." Jenny was quiet for a moment. Then, "Mama used to say God puts people in our path when we need them most. You think he sent Lily to us?" Tom looked out the window. The night was dark and starless, clouds covering everything, but inside, the lamp burned steady. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe we were sent to her." The next morning, Tom rode to the bank. He had $30 in his pocket, every cent he'd saved over the winter, not enough to make a difference, but enough to make a point. Silas's office was warm and smelled like pipe tobacco. He sat behind his desk reading a newspaper, didn't look up when Tom entered. "Mr. Brennan, what a pleasant surprise." Tom set the money on the desk. "Payment toward my mortgage. June's a ways off, but I'm paying early." Silas finally looked up. His eyes were flat, unreadable. "How responsible of you." "I want a receipt, dated and signed." "Of course." Silas opened a drawer, pulled out a receipt book. He wrote carefully, his handwriting precise. Tore off the receipt, handed it over. $30, noted. Tom folded it, tucked it in his pocket. "The Hargrove auction. I'm bidding." "Are you?" It wasn't a question. 40 acres at fair market value. I'll bid whatever it takes." Silas set down his pen. "Mr. Brennan, let me be frank. That land is worth perhaps $400 on the open market, but with the railroad interested, it could go for twice that. Do you have $800? Tom didn't. They both knew it. "Furthermore," Silas continued, "even if you won the auction, the child has no legal claim to residency. She'd be homeless. And you don't have guardianship. You'd own land with a squatter on it. The law would require you to evict her." The words hit like hammers. "Unless," Silas said softly, "you drop this crusade. Let the auction proceed. The land sells, the bank recovers its losses, everyone moves on. The girl can go to a good family. An orphanage, perhaps. Somewhere she'll be cared for. She's cared for now. Is she?" Silas leaned back. Or is she being used as a pawn by a man who can't let go of his own grief? Tom's vision tunneled. His hands went to the desk edge, gripping hard enough that his knuckles went white. "You set that fire," Tom said. Low and dangerous. "You killed her parents for $2,000. Careful." Silas's voice was ice. "Slander is a crime, and I have witnesses who'll say you've been making wild accusations for weeks. A judge might wonder about your fitness as a guardian." He paused. "Your ranch mortgage, there's a clause about mental competency. If the borrower is deemed unstable, the bank can call the loan immediately. Protect its interests." The threat was naked now. Tom straightened slowly. Every muscle in his body screamed to vault the desk, to wrap his hands around Silas's throat. But that would only prove him right. "We're not done," Tom said. "Oh, I think we are." Silas picked up his newspaper again. "The auction is April 15th. 2 days from now, I suggest you prepare the child for disappointment and yourself for the consequences of interference." Tom walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Outside, the sun was trying to break through clouds, failing. The street was mud and wheel ruts. His horse stood at the hitching post, patient. Tom climbed into the saddle. His hands were shaking. He'd been in fights before, bar brawls, cattle disputes, claim jumpers. But this was different. This was fighting shadows and paper in a system built to protect men like Silas Drummond. He thought about Lily's face when she talked about her parents, about Jenny asking if they could keep her, about Pastor Amos risking his church funding, about Esther digging for truth in a town too scared to speak it. And he thought about his wife, dying alone because he'd been too far away to help. He wouldn't be too far away this time, whatever it cost. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The storm was coming. April 14th dawned clear and cold. One day before the auction, Pastor Amos had called an emergency town meeting, not at the hall above the general store, but at the church. "Sanctuary," he'd said. "Old territorial custom. What's spoken under church roof can't be used for legal retaliation. It's the one place we can speak truth without fear." Tom wasn't sure he believed it, but he rode in anyway, Lily and Jenny on either side of him. The church was packed, every pew filled, people standing along the walls. Tom recognized faces, ranchers, shopkeepers, hired hands, the widow from Esther's boarding house, the blacksmith, even the railroad clerk. Silas sat in the front row, arms crossed. Pastor Amos stood at the pulpit. On the table beside him lay a leather-bound book, the baptismal registry. "Thank you all for coming," the pastor said. His voice was steady. "We're here because a great injustice is about to occur. Tomorrow, the bank will auction land that rightfully belongs to a 12-year-old orphan. I have proof." He lifted the registry, opened it. 7 years ago, I witnessed Samuel Hargrove sign his land deed right here in this church on the day his daughter was baptized. 3 witnesses signed alongside me, Esther Whitfield, Jacob Mills, and myself. He turned the book so the congregation could see. "The entry is here, dated, signed, witnessed." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Silas stood. "Pastor, with all respect, that registry was stolen, then miraculously found again. How convenient." "It was never stolen. I hid it." Pastor Amos's voice rang clear. "After the Hargroves died, my office was broken into. Only one thing disturbed, my desk where I kept records. I realized someone was looking for this." He tapped the book. "So I locked it in the cellar safe. Told everyone it was stolen to protect it." "Protect it? Or forge it?" Silas's smile was thin. A man could add entries to an old book, change dates, fabricate evidence. The ink is period consistent. The entry matches the chronology of surrounding records. Any expert could verify authenticity. Could they? Silas turned to the congregation. Or would they verify what a desperate preacher wants them to see? The room shifted. Doubt flickered across faces. Then the church door opened. A man walked in, tall, lean, with Tom's eyes and jaw but younger. He wore a suit dusty from travel, carried a leather satchel. Tom's breath caught. Robert. His brother scanned the room, found Tom, nodded, then turned to Pastor Amos. "I'm Robert Brennan, from Laramie County. And I've got something to say about Silas Drummond. Silas's face went rigid. Robert walked to the front, set his satchel on the table. 3 years ago, Silas Drummond was bank manager in Laramie. He orchestrated a similar scheme: fraudulent loan documents, forced auctions, land speculation. We couldn't prove it then. He transferred here before we could build a case. Robert opened the satchel, pulled out papers. But I've been collecting evidence, testimonies from 5 families he defrauded. Patterns the same every time. He handed the papers to Pastor Amos. The room was dead silent. Silas stood slowly. This is a conspiracy. You're all— Sit down, Drummond. Sheriff Mathers stepped forward from where he'd been standing in back. Tom hadn't even seen him come in. I'm listening to these folks, and I'm starting to wonder about a lot of things. Silas's jaw worked, but he sat. Tom felt Lily's hand slip into his. She was trembling. Pastor Amos cleared his throat. There's one more piece of evidence. He looked at Lily. Child, you still have your mother's locket? Lily reached under her collar, pulled out the silver locket. The chain glinted in lamplight. May I? Pastor Amos asked gently. She lifted it over her head, handed it to him. He carried it to the window where sunlight streamed through, held it up, examining the seam. It's been frozen shut since the fire, he said. But the church is warm, and it's April. He pressed his thumbnail into the clasp, working it gently. The locket popped open. Inside, a folded piece of paper, yellowed and brittle. Pastor Amos unfolded it carefully. His eyebrows rose. It's a deed map, he said. Hand-drawn, shows the Hargrove property boundaries, landmarks, creek line. He held it up so the congregation could see. And in the corner, a signature. Samuel Hargrove. Same handwriting as the baptismal registry. Gasps rippled through the room. Silas stood again. That proves nothing. Anyone could have drawn. It matches the surveyor's official map on file at the county office, Sheriff Mathers said. I checked. Every measurement, every marker. His eyes narrowed. And it's old. 7 years at least, judging by the paper. The walls were closing in. Tom could see it in Silas's face. Calculation, desperation. This is absurd, Silas said. A conspiracy orchestrated by a man who wants to steal land through a child proxy. I have legal documentation. Forged documentation. Robert's voice was hard. I'm willing to testify under oath that you used identical methods in Laramie County. Fraudulent loan papers, manufactured debt, forced auctions. And I'll testify that the cabin fire was arson, Lily said. Her voice shook but held. The door was barred from outside. I remember. A child's memory. Backed by physical evidence, Sheriff Mathers interrupted. I examined those ruins. Door brackets bent at outward. Someone barred that door from outside while people slept inside. He paused. That's murder, Drummond. Silas's face went white, then red. I was in Cheyenne. I have receipts, witnesses. You hired someone. Tom's voice was quiet, but it carried. The railroad letter proves you had 2,000 reasons to want that land, and we both know you don't do your own dirty work. Silas stared at him across the crowded church. For a moment, something cracked in his expression. Fear, maybe, or rage. Then he bolted. Moved fast for a man his age, shouldered past people in the aisle, headed for the door. Sheriff Mathers lunged, but missed. Silas burst outside into daylight. Tom was already moving. He vaulted over the pew, hit the aisle running. Behind him, voices shouted, boots pounded. Outside, Silas was sprinting toward the creek. Tom's legs were longer. He closed the distance in seconds, tackled Silas into the mud. They rolled, grappling. Silas fought like a cornered animal, clawing, biting. Tom pinned him, one knee on his chest. You killed them, Tom said through gritted teeth. For money. Silas's face twisted. They were going to sell to a rancher, cut me out of the deal. I needed that land. The railroad was paying. He stopped, realizing what he'd said. Sheriff Mathers arrived, breathing hard. Behind him, half the town spilled from the church. Silas Drummond, the sheriff said, pulling out handcuffs. You're under arrest for fraud, and I'm investigating you for murder. The handcuffs clicked shut. Tom stood, chest heaving, his hands were shaking. He'd wanted to hit Silas, to make him hurt the way Lily hurt. But he hadn't. The law would do its job now. The real law, not the twisted version Silas had built. Lily appeared at his side, Jenny with her. Both girls stared at Silas, who knelt in the mud with his hands cuffed behind him. Is it over? Lily whispered. Tom pulled her close. Yeah, it's over. The creek rushed past, swollen with spring melt. Above, The sky was blue and endless. Birds called, meadowlarks, their song bright and clear. Winter was done. Spring had come at last. The courtroom in Cheyenne was bigger than any building Lily had ever been inside. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, windows that let in long shafts of dusty sunlight. She sat between Tom and Jenny, hands folded tight in her lap, trying to make herself small. Judge Hayes sat behind the bench, a gray-haired man with spectacles and a face carved from granite. He'd been hearing testimony for 2 days. The railroad letter, the baptismal registry, Robert's evidence from Laramie County, Sheriff Mather's report on the cabin fire. Silas sat at the defense table with a lawyer from Cheyenne. His face was pale, his new vest rumpled. He hadn't looked at Lily once. Now Judge Hayes was reading his decision. "In the matter of the Hargrove estate," he said, voice echoing through the room, "the court finds sufficient evidence that Samuel Hargrove did execute a valid deed to said property, witnessed and documented by Pastor Amos Carlisle and others. The baptismal registry, corroborated by the deed map found in the deceased Margaret Hargrove's locket, establishes clear chain of title." Lily's heart hammered. Jenny squeezed her hand. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "the court finds that the promissory note presented by Mr. Drummond was fraudulent, paper stock inconsistent with the alleged date, ink analysis showing modern composition. The loan never existed." A murmur ran through the courtroom. Judge Hayes looked at Silas. "Mr. Drummond, you are hereby found guilty of fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit theft. Sentencing will be in 2 weeks." He paused. "The criminal investigation into the Hargrove deaths remains ongoing. Sheriff Mathers has identified a witness, a drifter who claims he was paid to set the fire. If his testimony proves credible, additional charges will be filed." Silas's face crumpled. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Silas shook it off. Judge Hayes turned to Lily. His expression softened. "Miss Hargrove, the court hereby restores full title of your family's property to you, 40 acres, Section 12, free and clear." Lily couldn't breathe. The words were too big, too impossible. "However," the judge continued, "you are a minor without legal guardian. The court cannot leave you unprotected." He looked at Tom. "Mr. Brennan, you've petitioned for guardianship?" Tom stood. "Yes, Your Honor. The court has reviewed your character, financial standing, and testimony from multiple witnesses. Pastor Carlisle speaks highly of you. So does Sheriff Mathers." Judge Hayes shuffled papers. "There's also a letter here from Miss Hargrove herself, stating her wishes." Lily had written it 2 weeks ago, sitting at Tom's kitchen table, with Jenny helping her spell the hard words. "I want to stay with Mr. Brennan and Jenny. They saved my life. They're my family now." Judge Hayes stamped a document. "Petition granted. Thomas Brennan is hereby appointed legal guardian of Lily Mae Hargrove with full parental rights and responsibilities." He looked at Lily. "Miss Hargrove, or should I say, Miss Brennan, you're now legally this man's daughter." The words hit like warm rain after drought. Lily turned to Tom. His eyes were wet. "Can I call you Papa now?" she whispered. His throat worked. He pulled her into his arms, held her tight. "You already do, sweetheart." Jenny wrapped her arms around both of them. The three of them stood there in the middle of the courtroom, holding each other while the judge moved on to the next case. Outside, the May sunshine was bright enough to hurt. Esther and Pastor Amos waited on the courthouse steps. Robert stood with them, grinning. "Well?" Esther demanded. "She's ours," Tom said. "Legal and proper." Esther let out a whoop that made heads turn. She pulled Lily into a fierce hug. "About time justice showed up, even if it was late to the party." Pastor Amos shook Tom's hand. "The Lord works in mysterious ways, and sometimes through stubborn ranchers who won't quit." Robert clapped Tom's shoulder. "You did good, brother." Tom met his eyes. 3 years of silence sat between them, but something had shifted. "Thank you," Tom said, "for coming, for testifying." "Family helps family." Robert's voice was gruff. "Even when they're stupid enough to let pride get in the way." "I was stupid. So was I." Robert smiled, crooked and real. "But maybe we can fix that." Tom nodded. "Maybe we can." 2 weeks later, they stood on the ridge above the Hargrove property. The burned cabin was gone, torn down and hauled away. In its place, a foundation had been laid. Fresh lumber sat in stacks, ready for building. The whole town had come. Ranchers and shopkeepers, hired hands and families, even the railroad clerk. They'd shown up at dawn with hammers and saws ready to work. "Guest house," Tom had said when he announced the plan. "For when Lily's older, maybe wants her own place. or for travelers who need shelter, but it'll stand on Hargrove land, and it'll stand right. Now, watching the frame go up against blue sky, Lily felt something loosen in her chest. The grief was still there, would always be there. But it had space now, room to breathe around the edges. Jenny appeared at her side with wildflower stems, lupine and Indian paintbrush, purple and red. "For Mama and Papa," Jenny said softly. They walked to the small plot where Tom had placed 2 wooden crosses, simple, clean, carved with names and dates. Lily knelt, pressed the flowers into the soft earth. "We're rebuilding," she whispered, "just like you would have wanted." The wind rustled through new grass. Below, the creek ran strong and clear, fed by snowmelt from the high country. Above, a hawk circled, calling. Tom's hand settled on her shoulder. "You ready?" Lily stood, wiped her eyes, and looked at the rising cabin frame, at the people working together, at Jenny holding wildflowers, at the land her parents had loved enough to die for. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." They walked down the ridge together, father and daughters, legal and chosen and real. Behind them, the crosses stood watch. Ahead, the future waited, bright with possibility. That's how your Grandma Lily came to us, through a blizzard that should have killed her, carrying papers that nearly got buried forever. I'm telling you this now because you're old enough to understand. The world ain't always fair. Good people die, bad people prosper, and sometimes the law's a tool that builds or breaks depending on whose hands hold it. But here's what I learned that winter. Justice don't come automatic. Takes folks willing to stand up when standing costs something. Pastor Amos risked his church funding. Esther spent weeks digging through old gossip and receipts. My brother Robert, we hadn't spoken in 3 years, but he rode 2 days to testify. Sheriff Mathers could have looked the other way. He didn't. One person alone can't change much, but a community that decides enough is enough, that's a force even corrupt men can't fight. Silas Drummond served 18 years for fraud and murder, died in prison, bitter to the end. I reckon that's justice, though it don't bring back what was lost. Every May, we walk up to that ridge where Samuel and Margaret are buried. Wildflowers cover the ground now, lupine and paintbrush, same as the day we rebuilt. Your grandma tells them about you kids, about the ranch, about how the creek still runs strong and the cabin's been rebuilt twice more, once after a fire in '03, and again when the foundation cracked in '28. Last spring, we stood there together, me and Lily, both gray-haired now, watching our grandkids hammer nails, just like we did 40 years back. She turned to me and said, "Funny how the hardest winters grow the deepest roots." I reckon that's the truth of it. Some folks are family by blood, some by choice, and some, like your grandma, are family because God sent them through a blizzard when everybody needed saving. Even the man who thought he was already dead.